Ancient biblical prophets wrote about the future. Today, theologians are poring over those scriptures with a firm belief that their prophecies are coming to pass. Journey now into the world of eschatology on Prophecy in the News with author and lecturer J.R. Church.
On today's Prophecy in the News, we're going to begin a study in the Gospel of John. We've just concluded our study in the book of Revelation, and I thought it would be befitting for us to look at the Gospel of John. And Gary and I have found so many absolutely incredible things in this. I think you will be astounded at some of the things we're going to bring out on today's Prophecy in the News. Gary Stemmer is here to discuss with me the Gospel according to John.
And you know, the Gospel according to John, J.R., is built around the idea of the deity of Christ. Some have said that maybe the theme verse of the book of John, if you can say this, might be John 20, verse 31. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. J.R., what a statement. Absolutely condensed, it's packed with meaning, and it uses those two wonderful words, believe and life.
Yes. And the two words that preceded are Jesus is the Christ, the Christos, or in Hebrew, the Messiah. Okay? He says, these are written, all that he has written in the Gospel of John, these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Messiah, listen to this, the Son of God. He is no mere man. He is God, clothed in human flesh, the God-man. I guess, Gary, we could call the Gospel of John first revelation, and then the last work of the Bible, second revelation.
Oh, yeah. Because
both of these books concern the revelation of Jesus Christ, the revelation of Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, and that he is the Son of God. He is deity, not mere man. That is the crux of the message of both books.
Both books written, of course, by John, John and Revelation. And J.R. and I, if you've followed our programs and our writing down through the years, you know that we have compared the Gospel of John and Revelation, chapter by chapter by chapter. They bear out the same theme. If you want to call John first revelation, it reveals him at his first coming. Second revelation reveals him at his second coming. Yes. And it gets really exciting when you go dig in from that point.
That's right. And the Gospel of John deals with the liturgy of the Jewish Passover season. And the book of Revelation deals with the liturgy of the autumn festivals. So we have the spring festivals and the autumn festivals. We have the first advent of Christ and the second advent of Christ. In chapter 1 of the book of Revelation, we see Jesus standing in the midst of a 7 golden lampstand, the Jewish menorah. Well, in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, we see 7 lights. In him was life, and this life was the light of men, and the light shine in darkness, and it just goes right on 7 times using the word light. So we have a menorah design in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, and a menorah design in chapter 1 of Revelation. And this is true in every chapter. Just quickly an example here. In chapter 19 of Revelation, you see Jesus wearing a crown, a royal diadem. But in the Gospel of John, chapter 19, you see Jesus wearing a crown of thorns. But the theme is the same. And every single chapter is identical in its theme. Now, Gary, the interesting thing here is that some early theologians decided that, now we're talking, last century, or modernism in the 20th century, early years of the 20th century, decided that John didn't write both books. In fact, I read one statement where it says there is no comparison between the two books. They are not the same. It has to be different writers. The writing style is different. That's false. The writing style is identical in both books. Chapter by chapter, they are identical.
Particularly in their large-scale structure and outline, because they reveal the same general message, and it's as though you're taking two different views of the same event. Looking at an event in time that's already happened in the past, an event in time that's scheduled to happen in the future, and yet you're looking at the same thing. It's an amazing idea that only the Bible has thoughts on that level.
Yes. Now, the Gospel of John is also one of the most esoteric books in the Bible. Just as the book of Revelation deals with the sod level or the secret level of Jewish theology, if we can use the term theology here, which is a Greek term
Yes.
for Hebrew scholars, but the Gospel of John is also on the sod level, the secret level of biblical interpretation. I'll give you an example. John chapter 1 verse 1 says, "In the beginning was the Word." Well, this word here deals with the mystical meanings of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The Word. God spoke and the worlds came into existence, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus says, "I am the Alpha and Omega." In other words, He is the beginning letter and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. He is the Logos, according to the Greek, the Debarim in Hebrew. He is the Word in both books.
And J.R., this is a belief that goes back into the mists of history, back to Moses and before. Men who believed in the Lord always believed that He spoke the worlds into existence. They had that belief in their hearts, and I think He put it there. And by the time you get to the New Testament, where the Word spoke the worlds into creation, John actually puts it down in print, the thing that people had believed for centuries before.
Yes, and he was simply saying in this Gospel of John that Jesus was the one who spoke the worlds into existence. That's what he's saying here. Don't you know that is profound? Take, for example, Matthew. Matthew shows Jesus as the King of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Mark shows Jesus as the servant, the one who humbled himself to become a servant.
Yes.
And Luke shows Jesus in His humanity, the Son of Man. But John, oh my, John is greater than Matthew in the fact that Jesus is not just King of Kings, He is Lord of Lords. That's how much higher the level is from King of Kings.
And then we come back to that word, actually two words, and we're going to be spending some time on these words. Believe. It is such a powerful word, and J.R., it's repeated over and over and over again in the Gospel of John. The simple word believe.
Yes.
How profound is that? That, as we go into that, I think you'll be amazed.
Mm-hmm. John uses the word believe 98 times. And the interesting thing, Gary, is the Greek etymology here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's discuss for a moment the difference between believe and faith.
It's interesting that in the Greek language, the same word root is used for both words, faith and believe. But, and in a sense, if you have faith, you're a believer. If you're a believer, you have faith. In a sense, the meanings are similar. The Greek word pistis simply means faith, that is, having a system of belief in the Lord. But when John uses a variant of that in his gospel, he uses pisteuo, which is translated believe. And J.R., the difference between faith and believe is the difference between a passive belief system and an active one. That is, when you believe on something, or you're moving toward something.
Now, the interesting thing about the Gospel of John is that he avoids using the word faith.
Mm-hmm.
He avoids using this because faith, even though it is a good word found throughout the writings of the Apostle Paul, mm-hmm. it refers to simply an intellectual assent.
Yes.
I believe there's a God. I believe Jesus is the Son of God. But pisteuo instead of pistis, pisteuo here used by John is, I believe and I commit everything I've got to my belief system. So this is an active faith here.
Very active, and the Gospel of John, by the way, is written as a series of active narratives. In other words, you're moving along. In the beginning, the Word spoke the worlds into existence. and then you have an episode with John the Baptist, and then you have Andrew and Peter following Christ, and then you have the wedding Cana of Galilee, and you have Jesus doing a series of things and having a series of dialogues, like the dialogue with the Samaritan woman at the well, and so forth and so on. In other words, as you go through the Gospel of John, you are literally moving toward something reflective of that idea of believe.
And so, as we look at the Gospel of John, I want you to see some things that nobody else uses in any of their books of the New Testament.
Yeah.
John uses some unique verses, some unique methods of presenting the message, and that's what we're going to get into, so stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment. Our leading verse in the Gospel of John is found at the end of the book, in chapter 20 and verses 30 and 31. I want you to listen carefully to what John writes about Jesus. He says, "And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and deity is God clothed in human flesh. And through believing in him, an active belief, you can have eternal life." Now, Gary, let's deal with this not written in this book. What about the Gospel of John? Just what does John cover in the 3.5-year ministry of Jesus?
Well, you know, John is an absolute masterpiece of a compressed narrative, because when you read it on just a primary level, you think, well, I've read the whole story. I've read everything that happened in the public ministry of Jesus. But in fact, out of the 3.5 years of his public ministry, John covers 20 key crucial days, and 20 only. And you say, well, I didn't realize that. It looks like he's covered the whole thing.
That's incredible.
But it is.
Furthermore, when you get to chapter 12 of John, you're about halfway through the book. 12 through 21 covers 1 week. That's all. 1 week. The Passion Week. Well, you know, the movie only covered 12 hours, the Mel Gibson movie. And John only covers 1 week. But as a matter of fact, 1 day takes up 1/3 of the book. Tell us about that, Gary.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's fascinating, because 1 day in the Gospel of John is many chapters. The end of the Gospel of John is crafted in such a way that it brings the day of Jesus' entry, trial, crucifixion into compact focus.
Yes.
The whole end of the book deals with 1 day.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, a lot of the things that we're talking about is in this little commentary on the Gospel of John by Elmer Towns. It is an absolutely fascinating study. He did a great job on this, Gary. He says there are 879 verses in the Gospel of John. And 1/3 of them, 237 verses, deals with a 24-hour period. That's incredible to me. Now, I want you to notice that this little commentary by Elmer Towns, we're going to be talking about it for the next few weeks, because it gives us some of the insights into this book that you don't find in anybody else's commentaries. Dr. Elmer Towns is the Dean of Liberty University's School of Religion in Lynchburg, Virginia. And he also teaches the 2,000-member pastor Sunday school class at Thomas Road Baptist Church in Lynchburg. So Dr. Towns is a well-known and well-respected man. And this commentary here is just a gorgeous book. It just really was put together beautifully. But what I want you to notice about this is there is another commentary on the book of Romans that is a companion to this. You see that? The books look very similar. This one is by Dr. Woodrow, and he is the president of Back to the Bible broadcast. He's seen on their television program, weekly television program, Back to the Bible. He's also the speaker on the daily radio broadcast, Back to the Bible, and he took Theodore Epp's place. This is an absolutely incredible man. and his commentary on Romans is fascinating. The reason why we've got John and Romans here is because this deals with John's presentation, and Romans deals with salvation by grace through faith. It explains there are no works involved there. But then we have this third commentary here called the Book of Revelation by Dr. Ed Heinsohn. The three of them together, they are the only three. There are no other commentaries presented as these are, but these three books are companion books. Look at the design of them. Isn't that beautiful? Dr. Ed Heinsohn is the Assistant Chancellor, Professor of Religion, and Dean of the Institute of Biblical Studies at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. And he is also the speaker on the King is Coming television broadcast seen weekly across America. So these three books are absolutely incredible set of books. John, Romans, and Revelation. This wraps up really the whole New Testament concepts in these three commentaries.
JR, you know what I like about these books is that they bring into sharp focus ideas that you may never have considered before, and we're going to be talking about some of those. There are concepts that are often difficult to remember, but the way the concepts are presented in these books is that they are grouped together in specific groups and showing the similarities, shall we say, and making it easy to remember groupings of concepts. And that's a great idea, and all three books reflect that sort of thinking.
Yeah. So, these books sell for $17.95 each. I want to make all three of them available to you for $50. Okay? $50 plus shipping and handling. Call the phone number at the bottom of your screen. And this is called the 21st Century Biblical Commentary Series. I know that's a big, long word. We'll put it across the bottom of the screen so you can see it there. The 21st Century Biblical Commentary Series. Order them today, and you'll be as fascinated as I was when I picked up this book and began to read about the Gospel of John. It's absolutely incredible. Gary, let's talk about his metaphysical use of this 8 series. There are 8 in the Gospel of John.
Indeed. As you go through Elmer Towne's book, you discover that he, this is what I was talking about a moment ago, he shows how things are grouped together similarly. Here's an example, the 8 signs of Jesus' power that he gives. Number 1, turning water into wine. Number 2, healing a nobleman's son. Number 3, healing a lame man. Number 4, feeding the 5,000. 5, Jesus walking on the water. 6, healing a blind man. 7, raising Lazarus. 8, and the miraculous catch of fish at the end of the book. And JR, it's fascinating. 8 is the number of the new birth. It is the transcendent number that we've always talked about.
Yes. And also, it deals with the 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Chet, which is, the meaning of it is transcendence.
And transcendence is nothing more or less than moving into the realm of the metaphysical, which the Gospel of John does.
Yes.
And this is very well presented in Elmer Towne's book.
Another thing, when you see 8, it's 1 above 7. 7 is perfection. It's a perfect number. But 8 is above perfection. And so he is presenting Jesus Christ here as not mere man. He is presenting him as the transcendent Son of God. That's, I think, the main message. We talked about believe, we talked about the word life. We haven't really got into the word life. We will perhaps on the next broadcast. But there are 8 key words in this book.
Indeed, 8 key words. And those words are believe, life, those we've already talked about. Sign, I am, truth, knowing, witness, and Father. And speaking of I am, JR, Dr. Towne has the 8 I am sayings of Christ, the first of which, I am the bread of life. And, you know, the 8 I ams in and of themselves are fascinating. We're talking about more than just a metaphor here. We're talking about a title.
Right.
And again, it's a divine title.
John is taking us right back to the burning bush where God said, I am that I am. That's my name. And so he is presenting Christ as the great I am.
Yes.
You see, Jesus is the Jehovah of the Old Testament. He is the God who stood on the brink of time and in the beginning and spoke the worlds. Jesus is the Word that said, "Let there be light." That's how important Jesus is. You know, I saw a television movie called Judas, and they have Jesus as, "Here, Judas, you take care of the money bag because I don't know how to take care of the books. I'm just awful when it comes to trying to keep money." They had Jesus, you know, portraying himself as a buffoon. Hey, Jesus was God. And that's the main thing we want you to see in this gospel. Well, there's more, but we'll have to wait till next time. We'll be back in just a moment.